I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. We've called Charging Ahead, New Product Development in a Post-Pandemic Market. The webinar is brought to you by Renewed, and we are billing ourselves as the open network for specialized subscription, membership, and event professionals. My name's Suzanne Verity. I'm publisher at MJBizCon, and I'm your host today. During today's presentation, everybody should be on mute. I think we've determined that that's not the case, but that's okay. If you're unable to hear or see the presentation, or if you have any other technical issues, you can private message me, aka David Foster, my stunt double, through the chat in Zoom. If you have any questions for the speakers, you can present them throughout the presentation in the chat. Or at the end, of course, we'll have a live Q&A. After the presentation, you'll have access to the recording at www.renewed, no final E in that, .net/resources or /resources. You'll receive an email once it's posted. We also encourage you to share takeaways on social using #renewed. And I'll go ahead and kick off today's session, but that will be already passing the baton to David, who you'll hear from later, but he knows Anne quite well, much better than I do. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say for the first time, but he knows Anne and can do her justice. But I will say that she's back with us on this presentation by popular demand. Lots of people specifically requested to hear from Anne and to hear her story. So, David?
Yeah, obviously I don't claim any unique friendship with Anne other than a commonality of surviving for this long and generally enjoying it, I think. I mean, the energy you brought to this profession around your success has always been, kind of a marvel to me. So, it has helped me keep my own energy high over the years. And as Anne said in the warm-up calls for this, the huge success of what she's doing now goes back a few years, but kind of the miracle of keeping it fresh is, I think, what is interesting and why it's important to circle the wagons around right now and discuss what we're all thinking about those things. So I almost all of you on the call know how much Anne's contributed over the years, with energy and ideas and success stories and that sort of thing. So thank you for that. And I'm dying to hear what you're
Kathy Sexton called
to keep renewing.
Kathy Sexton also called her a product development and market analyst machine. So
and
that's high praise too. So, and she got to inherit some of that, the bounty that resulted from that expertise. So I'll shut up now.
All yours, Anne.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I made a few notes, but I think a lot of what I'm going to say, or a lot of them, are things that you guys already know. So I so apologize that 90% of this is going to be obvious to anybody, and the 10% that isn't obvious is also not obvious to me, because I just sort of always knew how to do what I do. And I've had a hard time finding other people who know how to, how some people are just really good at, like, I don't know, decorating a house or throwing on a great looking outfit. And you're like, why can't I do that? And then just, they were born that way. And I guess inventing new products is just that thing I got born with. I can't park, right? I can't do my hair. I can't, a lot of other things I'm terrible at, but that's the thing that I got. Which actually leads me to, when you're with an established organization, my problem was I always sort of thought that this was teachable and that this was something that, was obvious and everybody knows how to do it. And so I kind of left my best practices to, in PowerPoints and things. And I had actually, when we started the organization, we started with 3 different product lines that I invented for completely different marketplaces. And then I left actually after 5 years, and I left around 2015, and I took some time off, and then I just came back actually this February and started. Now I'm heading the organization again. And during the time I left, of course, I invented things, which are doing okay. But during the time I was gone, the team that I left in charge tried to invent stuff, and it all flopped. And it was like, oh God. And that's when I came back and I realized that these are things that are not necessarily easy to pick up on, and maybe they're not intuitive to everybody. And maybe, gosh, there's some magic there. So I'll give you my little rules that I gave them, and then I want to talk a little bit about people in particular, because people I think are our biggest problem for everybody right now, with the great resignation and all of that that's going on.
Yeah.
So first of all, we always set goals around what we wanted out of a product launch. So am I planning on selling this sometime soon? Yeah, M&A. Am I, what lifetime do I want from the product? Do I want a product that could last 3 years? Do I want a product for 20 years? And those are really different things. And once I set that, it just changes everything. I also always say, what do I need in terms of a gross to be worthy of launch? So everyone has all these amazing ideas, and I'm like, yeah, but it's got to be 50,000 gross, or it's got to be 100,000 gross, or whatever, just to justify, frankly, the effort of launching it. What's worth the effort? And as my companies have grown, and I think I've done this 9 times now in for-profit and 3 times in nonprofit, each time as it's grown, what that amount was changes. So you have to meet, like in my case, we meet every quarter, but you could meet maybe once a year and just say, okay, what size is worth launching now for us? Because it changes. And I remember my very first company getting really excited about a product idea that would gross 5,000, and that was a really big deal. And it was like that could, pay the mortgage for a few months, and it was huge. And, within 3 years, I wouldn't touch anything that wouldn't gross 50,000 in 3 months. So it just, it's just a business decision. Last but not least, I always look at how much staff time is this thing going to really take. I'll have people come to me with these ideas that are just like, oh, they're all excited about this amazing thing we could do. And I'm like, okay, let's really talk about genuinely what we have to hire to make that happen. And how much more stress is that going to put on my back office people? Is this going to be a bazillion customers, or is it going to be 3 customers? So customer service only has to deal with 3 people versus 10,000 people or whatever. So I'm looking at that staffing. Not only am I looking at the staffing in terms of how many people I have to hire, I'm also looking at, are we going to have the Hollywood problem here? And I actually stopped a launch last year in its tracks at the end of last year, because we were going to have the Hollywood problem, where we had this rock star editor who everybody wanted to, they would pay anything to get this guy's opinion about, he knew things about like cannabis in Germany. And if you were one of those people, you would just do anything just to hang out with him. You could do a Zoom with him once a month and they'd pay $10,000 a year. And it was going to be an easy launch. It was going to be super easy to sell. We had the list. But then I was like, great, if he gets hit by a milk truck or he suddenly clues in that he's the only one that can do this and just, says, F the NDA, I'm going to go over to Substack, we're screwed. We've got that Hollywood star problem. Sooner or later, you're going to have to, have a successor, which means you're going to have a successor right now, because you're going to have to begin building up that person's brand, because these people are buying into a branded product. And it's all about the personality, and and then that changed the cost structure, because I'd have to hire someone good enough to grow into being his backup brand, which means I need 2 Hollywood people. And you run the numbers and it becomes impossible. And it just killed my management team, right? They're like, but, and I'm like, nope, it's not worth the launch money that we would have. Within 2 to 3 years, he'd go out on his own. Or, the wife would say, let's change our lives, or, who knows, whatever. I'm not balancing everything on the pinhead of a celeb. for this particular market. Might be worth it for more money, not this one. So aside from staff and all of that, the other thing we do is standard math. And we used to think this was, I mean, it's baseline. So we say, for B2B, we require an audience size, and audience is the professionals for whom this is at least 50% of their job revolves around this. It's not just part of their job or part of their job someday, it's 50% of their job now or more. You need at least 5,000 of those people, and it should be growing toward 10,000. For the client size, client is the word we use for someone who would advertise, sponsor, or exhibit, right? The person who wants to reach the eyeballs of the audience. Baseline, I want at least 50, and those 50 have to be spending some money advertising, exhibiting, or sponsoring, trying to reach that audience already. I don't want to have to educate them and, gee, you should advertise. We also always require at least one competitor. And that actually was back at Phelps Business Information, that was a Tom Thompson rule, where if there wasn't a competitor, he would not rubber stamp the memo to do a launch. Because he said, if there isn't already somebody out there, first of all, you can't do list swaps or marketing swaps with them. And secondly, there may be a good reason for it. You think it's a great idea, maybe it isn't. And I think we all learned from things like pets.com that first mover advantage is not actually that big a deal. That smart advantage is a big deal. And you can acquire, or you can crush, or you can partner with anybody else who's already out there. And God knows I've done that. So I used to use that rule, and it felt good. And I still do use that rule as a base minimum, but it doesn't guarantee results. When I launched my current company with the terrible name Holland Ventures, we had 3 different marketplaces that we served, each of which was that or better, each of which was growing by at least 7% a year, which is our other rule, each of which was actually roughly the same size in millions of dollars and kind of the amount of money that the industry had. And one of those launches, we ended up selling to Kathy, Subscription Insider, and we sold it to somebody who then sold it to Kathy. And it did okay. It's a nice business. It's a nice business for to run with a couple of people, but it's never going to be a giant business. It's a perfect, lovely business. The second one was something called Witch Test One. We ended up selling it to a technology company for a little under $1 million. It was a nice little thing to flip. It was fun, but it's a little under $1 million size business. The third one, again, these are all the same, and we use the same kinds of editorial practices, the same types of marketing, all the best practices and landing pages, how to run a company. We ran them very similarly, although they were different topics in different markets. And then the third one was, Marijuana Business Daily. And right before the pandemic, we were worth over 200 million. So, it's hard to predict. And I think you have to have those baseline numbers of, okay, this is what's worth launching. But then, I don't know, there's some magic factor in terms of what's going to be the thing where it just, sparkles and takes off. And I think it has to do maybe with the excitement and glamour behind the industry. The way that it catches at people's attention. And at the time, marijuana was definitely the smaller of the industries and much more the most risky one. And yet that one was the one where we could sell a ticket no matter what. We could, we had, at one point, we had 56,000 people on our email list, and we sold 35,000 tickets to the show. I mean, just, that wasn't me. No one can say, oh, gee, Anne's so great. It was just, we tried 3 different markets using the same principles and the same, things. And gosh, that one took off. Since then, I actually launched, 2 of the nonprofits I launched recently. I found an interesting similar dynamic where they're both successful and they both had kind of similar structures, same kind of staffing, same kind of marketing, all the best practices around them. And one of them just exploded and just became like this huge thing, and the governor's writing letters and everyone's coming for photo ops, and it's this glamorous, sexy thing. And the other one is just kind of stolidly successful. And it's because it caught that attention, it caught that moment of excitement. And so it's having a knack for finding that. What is the cool hip hop thing that's going to happen? With the nonprofits, one of them is actually an arts organization for professional writers. And the other one is a flower organization where we give away flowers to charity. The flower one just, boom, because flowers are in fashion. Anyway, let me move on to once we pick our topic, then we really looked for market research into that audience. I tend not to go to my editorial team. I may involve them on the committee, but I don't go ask them what's the sexiest, hottest thing in this market that much, because I find that editorial people tend to be news hounds, and they tend to always want to be looking for the absolute cutting edge thing, right? Because they're bored by the ordinary stuff. They've written 10 stories about it. They've written 100 stories about it, and they want this super duper, like way out there, cool niche thing. And actually the audience is usually about 2 years behind editorial a lot of the time. For example, I had a newsletter called Fame that I ran for a while, and the audience, if the subject line read how to get featured on the Wall Street Journal, the audience would click it, they would read it, they would give you any amount of money, they would do anything for that story. And you could run that story every damn week, and they did not care. The editors were bored out of their minds. I mean, like their brains were bleeding out of their ears. And they were like, please God, can we do some niche stuff? And I'm like, well, it's just not gonna work. So I learned like to pay attention to what the audience really wanted. The other thing that I also do is I don't always pay attention to the pain point of the audience. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to develop for a pain point. I found that, I mean, it's good to know what the pain point is. It's super helpful often in copywriting. But I found that when I launched against a pain point, often it was a pain point because people didn't really want to solve it. And I'll give you an example. I work for Jane's Publishing, Jane's All the World's Aircraft, Jane's Defense Weekly, all of that back in the 90s as a young marketer. And I was in charge of launch marketing for a new product to address the pain point that at that point, the defense industry was tanking. Amazing. It was tanking. And so they thought, oh my God, the big pain point in the defense industry is that nobody can sell any, all the military people can't sell things to the military. So let's fix this pain point. All these poor people want to make lots of money selling weapons. Let's fix the pain point. And they found that apparently if you went to countries like South Korea and Vietnam and Malaysia, apparently they did want to buy weapons. So Jane's went, oh, great. We're going to do this wonderful whole new set of, advisories on, you can how to make millions selling weapons to Asia, basically, which is horrible and skeezy, but true. Anyway, I was in charge of launch marketing, and I'm like, this is great. This is this pain point. I can use great copy for it. Your sales are tanking. We found the solution. Here you go. The product died. We had to cancel it after 6 months because nobody wanted to buy it, because every single defense industry salesperson was a good old boy who knew their counterpart, who was also a good old boy in the military, and they go out and have a few beers or a few scotches together, and they all knew each other at NATO, and they party in Brussels or whatever, and they had their friends, and they just wanted to sell more shit to their friends. Sorry, I swore. And they didn't want to go to Asia. They were like, oh, I don't know, they don't speak. I mean, they were a little racist. They were just kind of good old white boys, and they were never going to buy that product. So I learned a lot. I'm like, okay, it's not about pain point. It's, yeah, great. It can help you get there, but it's about what's exciting. And if I had been able to say how to sell more to NATO, that thing would have just fallen off the shelves. It would have just they would have paid me anything. Sadly, I couldn't because it wasn't possible at the time. The next thing I do is I look for words in particular email subject lines, social media. I look for taxonomy. But just topics, like what are the topics that just seem to pop like crazy? If I have this word in the subject line, if I have this topic in the headline, is this the one that's getting all the traction? And I might then issue a special report or a little collection of, old articles, top 10 articles or whatever, to see if it really is the traction thing. And then say, okay, if it is the traction thing, now let me develop a product around that and sell it to my list. I have a problem with the marijuana industry in that there are so many other people interested, outsiders, that I can't use that anymore, because I'll have, people who aren't in the industry clicking on things like crazy, and I don't always know who you are when you click on things. But in past industries, when I was a niche industry, I could tell. So for example, at Marketing Sherpa, I did that, and I looked at all the words that seemed to really get the response rates, and they were two things. They were email newsletter, literally the word email newsletter, and the word landing page. So I sat down and we wrote a landing page handbook and published it, and we made $980,000 in 6 months selling this dumb little handbook. It was a PDF, and I printed it up at Kinko's. It just was no, thank you for buying it. And it just, whew, and I wouldn't have known what topic. I was like, I don't care what we write a book about. And then the other word, email newsletter, I said, okay, great, let's launch an email summit. And it's 0 to 60. We sold over 1,000. It was 1,200 tickets in 3 months. And I was desperately like, I think we had rented a place outside Chicago and was like, okay, and like suddenly I was in the trade show business for that thing. And then it just grew. But that's, thank you, Ed, for attending it. But that's how we came up with those ideas. It was simply based on looking at the words that were the sexiest words and saying, okay, is this a show? Is this a book? What the heck is it? Okay, try it. And that worked. When it comes to deciding what the product should be, we do persona-based modeling. I stole that from marketing. If you're into persona marketing, it's where you actually literally take like a photograph and say, this is our target market. This is what this person looks like. Each product usually has 2 to 3 people that are very different people that are the target market. And we even get down to the level of, well, what car do they drive? Where, what are they, why are they in this business? What do they really care about? It's less about what keeps them up at night, but it's more about what makes them get excited. Like, why are they going to work every morning? What is their dream to get out of this career or this company? Why would they buy something? Usually when I run this, I find that usually only 1 out of the 3 characters actually cares about discounts. So if you're discount marketing, you're maybe only marketing to one of those personas. And you have to understand, like, one of them's usually there's one that's all about the ego. And so it's a whole different marketing play. So we look at, who these people are. Right now, for example, for cannabis, I've got one that we call the Diva, one that we call Stephanie, and one that we call Chuck. And, they're very, very different people. And every product is developed, making sure that Stephanie has the stuff she needs in it and the offer she needs. And Chuck has the attitude he needs and the offer he needs. And it even narrows down to what pictures we're using in the marketing. So are Stephanie, Chuck, and the Diva represented in the photography? Are they going to look at that and go, okay, yeah, it's for me? It's represented in terms of what the sessions are, what kind of parties we have, what the headlines are, what the angle is. And I give the photographs to editorial, and then I say, you're writing this story for Chuck, or you're writing this story for Stephanie, and it helps them really narrow it and get it down. So I'm not looking at a market as a total market at this point when I'm really getting into serious product development. I'm absolutely persona marketing, market developing. So for example, for Sherpa, for a lot of my Marketing Sherpa products, initially, in particular, the ones that were for online marketing, we had several niches that were online marketing, like the B2B marketing biz that we ran for a while. We knew this person was a red-headed stepchild in their organization. They had a hard time getting a budget. Nobody took them seriously. Everyone said, well, can we just cut your budget? They had to have data to prove things. They felt unloved. They felt like no one understood them. They were never going to get promoted. And so we knew all their emotions and what they were like, and they drove a Honda, and we knew how to, I'm not going to say manipulate because that's evil, but just say, okay, this is your publication. We are going to create this for you. And we're going to tap into those emotions you have. So the stories are going to be about, did your boss treat you like, terribly? Here's how we can solve it. And here's the data that you're going to need to walk into that meeting with when sales poo-poos your sales leads. And we knew, how they felt, and we built it for them. And we had little, again, persona marketing had little pictures of them and everything. And that just touched them. And it's genuine. I'm not yeah, it sounds like I'm super manipulative, but on the other hand, I genuinely care about those people, and I genuinely cared about those people. And I was excited and happy to develop things for them. And then that also played into keeping employees retained, because they felt like they were helping someone. And it made a difference, because employees like to feel like they're really making a difference in the world, and they're not just making a difference in your bottom line. So aside from that, then I go into product type. How do I figure out what products to do? I got to tell you, if trade shows right now, if you're inventing an event, good luck finding space. That's the #1 challenge that you're going to have, because everybody who had to cancel for the past 18 months is now scrambling for space too, and maybe doing multiple events more than they would be. You're competing for a lot more people for space. So if you're even considering doing an event, it's a space hunt right now. Get the space, lock it down, and then figure out what you're going to do with it. I mean, that's really the biggest challenge. Virtual events, everyone is going to be doing, especially in the US, they're adding some virtual to it. They're doing hybrid. However, if you're doing virtual only, the only way that works is if it's a tiny group. Tiny group of people who know each other, like we could do virtual, but even we were talking like, oh, let's get together by the highway. And it only works if there's a speaker people desperately want to hear, content they desperately want. Virtual is going to work for training. Virtual is going to work for secrets, right? If it's about the content. Otherwise, events right now are all about people hanging out with people. It's just they want to see each other, and virtual won't do it. And also, if your event is based on exhibitor revenue, virtual just sucked eggs for exhibitors. And I don't know, I've been watching virtual event software for 20 years now, and it just has not gotten better. Virtual exhibits just, there's nothing good there. There's just nothing good. They don't even want to put up with it if they don't have to. We had people last year, we moved from real to virtual, obviously, because we had to. And we had exhibitors who said, just hold on to my money. Just give me a booth in 2022 or 2021, or, when it's safe. Fine. I don't care. I'm not going to do this virtually. And they were right for the most part. So it's difficult. I would do training virtually, and that's about it. Or very tiny niche events. If it's print, we launched a magazine in 2012, which was insane. I never thought I'd launch in print again. And it went on to become $1 million product for us, which was super nice. We mostly launched it because actually not for the money. We mostly launched it because we wanted an excuse to, be in your hands, because I felt that being palpable always helps, especially when you're an industry spread across a wide geographic area. And everybody could throw up a website, but not everybody can have something in print. And it made us more real as a brand in what was becoming a very competitive marketplace. It also gave me an excuse to run a show preview special before my show. So you get like a 13-page insert that sold tickets. We are talking about canceling the magazine now, honestly. We're looking at the numbers every other month. I don't know if it's going to be around next year or not. It's still selling, but first of all, of course, as you know, printing is getting more expensive by the minute. It may resolve, but it's not going to resolve by about 2023, I don't think, because wood's just whack. The second thing is, of course, USPS has announced that postage is probably A, going to go up, but B, it's going to be incredibly slow. So we've had to move everything back for the August issue. I think I'm like mailing like the September issue any day now. I mean, it's just insane how much further back you have to move all your production. And then the stories are a little old. And then lastly, we had a problem with our advertisers who don't believe that people are in their offices. So they say, I'll advertise in the magazine next year when people are back to work, because I don't believe that my ad's being seen. So we literally went out there and sponsored a study and did the whole thing where you do the study, the readership study, to show that the ad impact study, you pay money for it, and then they do a survey on how people use the magazine. Did they receive it? Did they look at the ad? Do they remember the ad? It's a classic, thing. And it turned out that actually the magazine was doing really well. Like the advertisers were really getting good value out of it. Their ads were being remembered. People were passing on their copies to other people. It was awesome. It was the best numbers I'd seen in years. And so we gave it to the sales team, and we trained the sales team in how to go back out and use this survey data to the study to sell things. And I got to tell you that the advertisers are like, yeah, it's great. Can get back to me in 2022. It just, you can educate them all you want, but okay. Maybe I'll be in print next year. Maybe I won't. I don't know. When it comes to, although I've got to say one thing, the younger millennials and the generation right before the younger millennials, the very, very young people, are really into print. Right? They're not into print direct mail because, of course, environment and wasteful and what the hell, and it's your grandmother's mail, but they're into print books. And they are into magazines. I mean, they have old-fashioned record players, and it's a trend. It's a thing. If you look at LP sales, like genuinely LP sales, they've been going up steadily for about 7 years now. So it depends on who your persona is. Again, there's no sweeping conclusion. And as you know, the younger people, I mean, there's a lot of people who are really into buying those kits, those subscription kits, where it's a box and you get this box once a month and you open it up and it's got all sorts of things you want. It's mostly direct that you're going to sell at a garage sale 5 years later, but it may be a book and a little bit of a little Christmas decoration or candle or what all. Those things are selling like crazy. Those are subscription services that are working to that younger generation who are thinking, oh, this is exciting to get something in the mail. So if I were looking into subscriptions for, in particular, consumer subscriptions, but maybe even B2B in 20 somethings, I wouldn't disdain print. I would think about things in print. Paywalls. The best source for paywalls, to my mind, is it Nieman Lab or Nieman Lab? Harvard's Nieman Lab. I don't know how to say it. Whatever it is.
Nieman.
Thank you. Is it? Thank you. Okay, so I don't know if you get the Nieman Lab newsletter. It's free. It's daily. It's to die for. It's the best research on how to make money. They're focusing to some degree on newspapers. They have a good podcast section as well, but they've got good coverage in general for online publishers. So how to make money with content online. They had a story a few weeks ago about the Globe and Mail in Toronto. And the Globe and Mail has designed their own set of software. I talked to them afterward. It's just a little, you can just tag your stories with it, and suddenly it decides where to put the paywall and where to show an ad. And it's amazing. And it's actually relatively inexpensive. So what newspapers are doing, and I talked to some other newspaper publishers around here, and they don't want to put firm paywalls down, right? Because they need the advertising revenue. But at the same time, if they don't get the paywall revenue, they're screwed. So they have to make a balance. And this software actually helps you. It automatically decides which visitors get the paywall and which visitors just get shown a lot of page views because they're never going to convert. And I don't know how it knows it, but it knows it. I talked to the sales rep. It sounded great. It was actually really, again, relatively inexpensive. It was like $2,000 a year. I was like, okay. And it does work with WordPress. It works with a lot of other installations. So I'm really following Nieman Lab when it comes to what all the other publishers are doing and what they're testing in terms of, paywalls, et cetera. In general, paywalls have to be even closer to the front of the website than ever now to work these days. You may have noticed the New York Times was doing a lot of experimentation around, oh, it should be like 8 pages. They should be able to see 3 to 8 pages a month. And they've recently moved that paywall up smack dab to the front where you don't see anything. Because it just made such a difference in terms of revenue. So I love that software, and I'm just continuing to watch paywalls as a whole. And Neiman's doing a good job. They're also doing a good job covering the whole podcast arena. In terms of advertising, we've been experimenting, actually going back to CPM. So I'm looking at launches that may actually rely on CPM, which blows my mind because my knee-jerk reaction was, are you kidding? Like death spiral? But you know, for some markets, it works. So, okay. I'm getting $40 to $60 CPM, and right now, because of the market we're in, we get a shitload of traffic. So, okay, I'll take it. Crazy, but true. We've also just launched, wait for it, buyer's guides, which, blast from the 80s. But just no one in my editorial team, again, it's this whole generation, they grew up with, they're like, what is that? I literally had to say it, like explain what a buyer's guide was, because like nobody under 40 knew what it was. And I had to like draw little pictures. I did a PowerPoint, like this is what a buyer's guide is. And it's going to have useful editorial, and it's going to help them. And they go, oh, like Gartner. I mean, oh, and then you have to talk them down from wanting to be like Gartner, because no, I'm not going to go and invest in all these salespeople to deal with that level of stuff. No, I'm just going to make an ad base. So you have to talk them around to what the business model is for the buyer's guide, which is just pricey ads. Unless you want to go be like Gartner, and please God, don't be like Gartner. I've done that business model. It's not worth it unless you're them. It's interesting that these old things won't be brought to you by your development team necessarily, and you can go and reverse train them on that sort of thing. When it comes to just a niche subscription newsletter, niche subscription products, I'm finding they have to be incredibly personality driven. That's that whole Substack thing. The problem is, though, that either you've got the celeb editor problem, which is a real thing. So that it has to be huge. I probably wouldn't do a personality driven newsletter unless I was the personality that owned the company, or it was business to consumer. So it was so many millions of dollars. It was so big that I could, go crazy with it. And I had a nailed down contract, and I had insurance against that. I would have key man insurance out the wazoo. Or you end up with a group of niche people. I don't know, you're going to have an editor in chief who's just really good at dealing with hand-holding niche people. And they're going to have to be good at hand-holding millennial niche people. So you could put together a little team of, 10 or 12 millennial personalities and give them health insurance and give them good benefits and run a bunch of niche newsletters. But I'd have a whole group of them. You'd have to have a bunch of them, because each one of them is going to make what, they're not going to, you're going to be lucky to hit 100,000 a year with them. So you're going to need one marketer who's marketing for everybody, right? And you're going to need one bookkeeper in the back office who's back officing for everyone. So you're doing all you're condensing your back office and making your G&As as low as possible for all these little niche newsletters. I mean, you can get away with it. So you're kind of doing your own Substack in a way, if that makes sense. I've tried doing that. It never really worked well for me because I wasn't good at dealing with all the different personalities of the newsletter people. And then suddenly somebody would have a baby and they'd want to stop, or it just, when everything's relying on one person, it's very, for that editor, it's frustrating and annoying. Personnel, which brings me to people. And I've got a few things to say about people. One of them is my top people who are really good at inventing things tend to be super, super busy. And I have a hard time getting them to put aside the time that they need to invent the thing. Because they've got 57 meetings and I'm going to do a partnership deal with this person. And oh my gosh. So what I try to do is tell them they've got the flu and they're out of the office for the week, and literally force them to have the flu and go do it. I've often found that people who are good at maintaining your product, like if you've been publishing for years and years, and you found a really good crew of people who are great at running the thing, they're often not that great at actually inventing the new thing. It's a different skill set. And actually, the man who was the head of marketing for American Greetings once told me, he said, I've got two different kinds of marketing creatives. One of them is an incremental improver. They can run the marketing campaigns, they can run our systems, run our processes, and they'll make a few tweaks, you know, make it better every year. And then there's the other person is the out of the box thinker who's going to go, oh my God, the crazy new thing. And the crazy new thing may fail, or it may be explosively great. And he said, you can never get those qualities in one person. And if you're hoping to make one person that person, they're going to fail. And then you're going to be annoyed and the whole thing just, So you need that kind of out of the box thinker, possibly paired with a practical person or a pragmatic person together that works. And then you have to give them both the flu. Last but not least, you have to think about the Great Resignation. I'm sure we're all having problems now with the Great Resignation. And of course, this is the wave of people just quitting their jobs. And they come to you and they say, I love working for you. I love this market. I love this company, but I need a change. And I think all of us are dealing with it. Initially, it was hard because I felt like we were failing and we were scrambling, and we did our best to make everybody happy throughout the pandemic. I mean, I'm sending them houseplants, right? I'm sending them candy. You have no idea how much stuff we did to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy. But
not flowers.
I'm
not
sorry?
Flowers.
I
had
also
to
sent them flowers.
Interject, not flowers.
I had 18 months of shit so I, just every couple of months they get something in the mail. I mean, just, buckets of locally made candy. I mean, oh my God, we worked it. We also did wish lists so that you could do peer recognition. People could give their peers money for good things they've done that day. We did just a peer recognition channel on our little virtual chat. We also did a few things. Number one, now we are reopening our offices finally. We're reopening next week. I made the executive decision that only 2 people in the entire company are required to come back to the office. So at this point, we're at 60 employees, and I'm only requiring 2 to be in the office. I'm requiring 1 person to pop in and get the mail, and 1 person to pop in and check the servers. That's it. Nobody else is required to be there ever. The office is open, and we have added more easy chairs, and we have added more plants, and we have added snacks in the kitchen, and we've done all the safety stuff, all the filters and what all. So it's open, and I've added like pictures of our past trade shows with happy attendees reminding you of what we're doing. In every single conference room, we've turned a lot of people's old offices into meeting places with little air filters. So there's more places where you can get together and meet, but there's only 2 people required to be there. We've done some surveys, we anticipate that initially about 40% of local employees will go back for a few weeks, but a lot of them will fall off, and we'll probably end up with about 20% of our total employees coming in routinely. And by routinely, I mean maybe 3 days a week. Not often, probably not Fridays because traffic. So we have become much more of a virtual employment organization. It's been great because we can employ the best people. We are located outside Denver, and being able to throw open our job openings nationally, and we also allow Canadian residents. What a relief. I mean, I'm getting quality now that I was just too competitive in Denver. So I'm getting amazing people that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I'm happy. The other thing we did was we designated certain jobs had to be within commuting distance. So we have 3 types of employees. We have employees who are required to stop into that office at least once a week to do the touch the thing, right? The mail, the server. We have employees that are required to be within easy commuting distance. They can decide what that means, but it means they're paying to commute. Like, I'm not paying for the flight. So I don't care if they're driving 10 hours to get there. I don't care. They make up that decision. And those are employees where we probably have like a team in-person meeting once a week where it really does make a difference for them to be together energy-wise. And then the last thing are people who could live anywhere. And at this point, we're still not allowing California because sales tax is a nightmare. But otherwise, we're allowing you to live anywhere you please. And we will pay for you to fly to the office twice a year for in-person team meetings because company culture and what all, and once a year at least to one of our shows. If I can't launch unless I can get through this great resignation, right? Everyone's exhausted. Everyone is worn out. Everyone's looking for change. And pitching a launch is the last thing people want to hear. They're not getting excited. So I have to make them happy to be there. I have to be sure that the key people I need for a launch stay, or I hire amazing people who will stay. I'm still sending them monthly, care packages if they're somewhere outside the office. I mean, I'm doing anything I can to keep that company culture going, and I'm not assuming it's going to happen in the office anymore. We also have a very strong diversity committee, and not always practical ideas, but we listen to them and we try to act on stuff. And I assigned a vice president to that committee just so that they would have to run up against a wall of practicality too. That helps. Because no, I'm not going to color everything rainbow for Pride. They trying to teach them what's performative and what's actually useful has been a challenge and a role, but it's worth it because that really matters to them. I literally kept people because they felt like we cared about the Black Lives Matter movement. So they kept their jobs selling ads for a marijuana show. Okay. This is what it takes. Fine. I respect that. It's about quality of life. Great. Last but not least, we have limited our meeting hours. I know I'm running up against my time. I'm sorry. We have limited our meeting hours to only 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 days a week. So what that means is if you work for me, you are required to be able to get to a computer for a meeting, guaranteed, during those time slots, if there is a meeting. And no one's allowed to call a meeting that is outside of those time slots. What that means is two things for launches. Number one, it guarantees you're going to have some open periods of time. There's Mondays, we don't have no meeting Mondays. So there's open periods of time when people aren't, thinking you're going to have a Zoom with them so you can sit down and think about a launch. The other thing it gives them is the freedom of their lives to go up and pick up the kid, to go deal with maybe finally getting a haircut after 18 months and it was the only time they could get, to go to the dentist, to take the lunch, whatever time zone they're in. People are now used to working whatever hours are working for them. So I'm saying, I'm getting, you're not going to be sitting at a desk 9 to 5, for the next 30 years. What I am asking is that you work full time, that you genuinely do the work that the job entails. I don't care when. And that you genuinely during 10 to 3, 4 days a week, you're around in case we have to have a meeting. And that is also helping. I'm still getting the great resignation because everybody is, but it is helping with the launches that we're doing and the people that we're getting. So I guess that's all I had to say.
We're all on mute. Awesome thoughts, Anne. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great.
And I had a couple of quick questions if I can jump in, Suzanne, if that's all right.
Sure, please do. Yep.
One, and I just put in the comments, but I know you started the company with offices, went to virtual, famously went back to the office because of the benefits of that. And
It
now,
was great.
now you've gone the other way. And by the way, the move to virtual was pre-pandemic and move back was pre-pandemic. How are you feeling about those trade-offs? And the other thing, with this idea of sort of core hours, and then you work your full-time schedule, but sometime, how does that work with non-exempt people?
What do you mean by non-exempt?
People that are that are compensated hourly, people that do not have exempt jobs under the IRS.
I get it. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, if I could have an office and have everybody in that office, it was great. I loved it. It was great for company culture. We made more money that way. People could poke their heads in. The communications were better. We did a good job of organizing it so that people felt like we did a good job. It isn't possible anymore. So I'm taking it as a trade-off. At least I'm holding on to core people. Because you're going to lose everybody if you just go back to an office, and you're going to lose everybody from 9 to 5. It just, this is reality. And I'm doing the best I can. We've also really trained people now to use the message boards. People are not texting each other all day long. It may not be perfect, but so we're getting better at company culture virtually. With non-exempt people, you just note your hours. The key is I don't care that those hours happen to fall between 9 and 5. They very well may, but I don't care, right? Yep. All I care is that you did your 7 hours. Yep. Or 8 hours or whatever they are.
Thanks.
I'm going to make this a last call for questions because we're right up, coming up on 11, but please, yeah, Tama.
Yeah, so I had posted, I was just wondering, Anne, if you, with that whole idea of people being, not local anymore, did you do anything? I know it's been a discussion about pay scale because say New York metro area versus someplace else that's not New York or one of the big cities.
Yeah, we had employees during the pandemic move to like Tennessee and then they're living like kings, right? Like, whoa, making all the money. We decided to stick with Denver metro pay scale, because we didn't want it to be unfair. What we decided was, this is what we pay for the job at this time. And you decide where you're going to live with that money. Mm-hmm. The other thing we have done very, very carefully was, what I cared about was pay scale, men versus women and people of color versus white people. And number of hours, years you've worked for me. We did a cross section of the company, making sure everybody was fairly paid. That actually happened right before the pandemic. And it cost me more money, but it was worth it. So we made sure everybody was right salaried.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And especially as you're growing and you have people come in from jobs and they end up making more than the person sitting at the desk next to them. We just right salaried everybody. And now we go back and do it every couple of years.
Yeah, really, really important. And being in Colorado, we do this as a practice, but I think in Colorado you're required when you post jobs to post the salary, right?
Yes.
So that's,
you are required by law.
Which, but from a DEI perspective, it helps keep you honest and not trip you up and not pay the woman 70 cents that you pay the man.
Yeah.
To some degree, because maybe somebody's negotiating afterward, or the posting's a little broad. Oh, we're paying between 70 and 80.
Yeah.
You still fall into it.
And anything on tech, like launching and there, how you're doing it, how important it is?
We're on Microsoft Teams, which I don't like, but it's what IT chose, and I have to keep them happy.
Yep.
We're on WordPress, which I don't like, but IT likes, so I have to keep them happy.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Whose company is it again, Ann? No, just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
We know IT runs the world.
Yeah. So if you have any time this October, and please God, the Delta variant doesn't take over the world the way it looks like right now. We're still living on the edge. Come to Vegas for the MJBizCon, October 20th through, we're anticipating 20,000 people.
Wow.
Most trade shows are doing, and that's very small for us. But we're assuming, we did a lot of math around how many people could drive from California and what all.
My partner Tim will be
Hopefully.
there.
Thank you. Yeah. And if anybody ever has questions about pandemic insurance, I'm happy to answer them at length with swear words.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we should take that pause and maybe wrap it up, but I predict a sequel in our future, if you're open to that, Anne, and we definitely want to hear this builds even more anticipation for hearing David's big idea for a future mega deal. I've got to know all the ins and outs of that. So I do expect that we'll get that story as well, but we decided ahead of time as a planning group, the three of us, that if we could get Anne rolling, we wanted to keep her rolling. So I think judging from the energy on this call, everybody thinks that was the right way to go. But
fantastic. Thank you for the perspectives. Like super.
Sorry about that, David.
No. Are you kidding? I look forward to the next discussion and keep your energy going.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be part like expertise download and part pep rally. And I think there is a good level of energy to make that happen. So thank you very much. I know I personally needed it, a lot of what you had to say. So that was great. So thanks to everyone else for joining us today. Thanks for letting us co-opt the second half of the previous meeting that I was part of as well. That's like double dating, or not double dating, double timing. That's what they call it. You can tell I've never had to do that. Or had the opportunity to do that. But thank you, Anne. And it was a terrific presentation. We really appreciate your time. And for all of you on the call, you'll receive an email this week with a link to the recording. We'll include Anne's email contact information there. And we hope you'll send some of the takeaways via social media, and you can use #renewed for that. Check out our webinar library, and we have a conference coming up September 14th through the 16th. So we'll hear from lots of other people who've been around and done wonderful things, as Anne has. But thanks again for attending, everyone. I appreciate it.